17th, and we'll be going over variables on both sides. And I'm on page 5. Variables on both sides. That's what we're going over today. So let's open up to our next available page. Again, for me, I'm on page 5. You do whatever page you're on. And we are working on variables on both sides. Okay, so step 1 with this will be you need to collect all variables on one side of the equation. So when we say collect, I'm talking about moving variables from one side to the other side of the equal sign. So that'll hopefully make more sense here in a few minutes when we get to working some examples. Step number 2 will be to collect all constants on the opposite side of the variable. So if you collected all your variables to the left side of the equation, then constants need to go on the right. If you collected all your variables to the right side of the equation, constants go to the left. Now, something I'm going to talk about real quick here too. Step number 2, guys. This is going to be the same step as what we've been doing when we were working on two-step equations. Alright, so collecting all the constants on the opposite side of the variables is the same thing as isolating the variable by using inverse operation. Alright, so that was the same thing as what we did when we were working on two-step equations, and you'll see that in a moment. Step 3. So step 3 is the same thing as step 2 for two-step equations, is you either need to divide by the coefficient or multiply by the denominator. Okay. So let's move on to examples. So the first example we're going to go over is going to be 10 plus m equals 2 plus 3m. Now, some of y'all, we've done this before, I know some of y'all do not like the constant coming before the variable. That's awesome, that's fine. Alright, all you have to do is switch the 2 up. Right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to switch the 2 up. Now, if we rewrite the equation, everything that's on the left side of the wall will stay there, and everything on the right side of the wall will stay there. All we're going to do is switch the variable into constant. So this is a positive m, so we would write positive m, and this is a positive 10, so we write that as plus 10. Okay, and then same thing over here, we're going to switch them. So this is a positive 3m, so it would be 3m. And this is a positive 2, so it would be plus 2. Okay, next step is we're going to collect all the variables on one side of the equation. Now, I'll say this, to make your life easier, always move the smaller variable. So 1m is smaller than 3m, So I would move the 1m over to the right side. Now, to move it, it's easy, guys. It's everything we've been doing so far, right? Everything we've been doing so far has been opposite operation, right? Inverse operation, okay? So, remember, there's an invisible 1 in front of the m, okay? So the inverse operation of 1m, positive 1m, would be to subtract 1m. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Now, notice, I put the m under the 3m, not under the 2. The reason being, variables can only be added or subtracted to variables, and constants can only be added or subtracted to other constants. So we do not want to subtract m from the 2, we want to subtract m from the 3m, because variables go with variables, constants go with constants. So over here, the m's end up canceling. Nothing's happening to the positive 10, the plus 10. So what I'm going to do, if nothing happens to it, we just bring it down. 3m minus 1m, so that would be 3 minus 1, would be 2, and then we bring the variable down with it. Nothing's happening to the plus 2 or the positive 2, so we're going to bring it down as well. Now, I have all my variables on one side. I have the 2m on the right side. So now I need to take the constants and move it over to the left. So we should notice something here. This looks a lot like a two-step equation, right? We have a constant equals a variable, a coefficient attached to a variable, and then plus or minus another constant. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do inverse operation again so that we can get the variable by itself. We want to deal with the addition and subtraction first before I start dealing with the variable. So I have positive 2. To get rid of it, we are going to subtract 2. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. Okay, 10 minus 2 is 8. Nothing's happening to the 2m, so we bring it down. I have plus 2 minus 2, so 2 minus 2 would be 0, and they're going to cancel. Great, so now we should recognize this as well, right? So this is where, so this was step 1, where we collected all the variables on one side of the equation. This was step 2, where we isolated the variable by using inverse operation, or we collected all the constants on the opposite side. And so now we're about to do step 3. Well, step 3 says to either divide by the coefficient or multiply by the denominator. Since we have multiplication here, this is 2 times m. We're going to do the opposite of multiplication, and we would divide. What I do to one side, I do to the other. The 2's cancel on the right side. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then the only thing I'm left with over here is m. And that would be my answer. M equals 4, or 4 equals m. And then that last step we did was that step number 3 I was talking about. Alright, so now we're going to move on to another practice problem. So hopefully we get an idea of what we need to do. So we're going to do a few more to practice them, and so we can get better and better and better and better. So let's move on to the next one. So the next problem is going to be 4x minus 5 equals 2x minus 5. So again, the 4x and 2x are the variables. So the first thing I want to do is collect all the variables on one side of the equation. Okay, well 2 is smaller than the 4, so I'm going to move the 2 over, and I'll leave the 4 where it is. So this is a positive 2x, so to get rid of it, we're going to do the inverse operation and subtract 2x. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Remember, variables go with variables. Alright, they do not go with constants. 4x minus 2x is 2x. I'm going to bring the minus 5 down, or the negative 5 down. Remember, this sign in front goes with the 5. It is attached to the 5, so we need to bring the entire negative 5 down with it. Not just 5, the negative 5. 2x minus 2x cancels. And then nothing's going on with the negative 5 over here, so I'm going to bring that down as well. Okay, now I have all my variables on one side. I need to get all my constants on the opposite side of the variable. So I need to get rid of this minus 5. Well, to do so, we do inverse operation. The opposite of minus 5 would be to add 5. What I do to one side, I do to the other. That way, those cancel. And nothing's going on with the 2x, so I just need to bring it down. Well, then I have minus 5 plus 5 is 0. Negative 5 plus 5 is also 0. Right, so those will cancel out to 0. So now I have 2x equals 0. Well, there's only one number that I can multiply by x to give me 0. Right? There's only one number I can multiply 2 by to give me 0, and that would be 0. So if we go through the math anyways here, I'm going to divide by the coefficient. The 2's will cancel. I'm left with x by itself. And then 0 divided by 2 would be 0. Alright. Woo! So hopefully we're getting a little bit better grasp of this. Now, next step, next equation. We're going to move on again. Okay, the next equation is going to be negative 12r minus 12 equals 15 minus 3r. Now this time, for teaching purposes, I'm going to keep the variables where they are, and I'm not going to like put the variables in first and constant second. Okay, I'm going to keep them where they are purely for teaching purposes. Now, the negative 3 is my larger variable. It's larger than negative 12r. Because remember, when we're working with negative values, okay, the closer the negative number is to 0, the larger its value. So in this case, the negative 3 is actually larger than negative 12. Now, what I would do here is I'm actually going to do a little differently than I have been. Instead of me moving over the smaller one, I'm actually going to try moving over the larger one. And what you're going to see is we're still going to get the answer correct. It's going to look a little bit different. All right. So I'm going to move the negative 3 over to the other side. Well, to do so, I would add 3r. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay. Negative 12r plus 3r. Make sure you're doing your integers correctly. If you're ever unsure, use a calculator. Negative 12r plus 3r is negative 9r. Nothing's going on with the negative 12, so we're going to bring it down. Nothing's going on with the positive 15, so we're going to bring it down. And then negative 3r plus 3r, well, they cancel each other out to give me 0. The negative 9r minus 12 equals 15 now. I have all my variables on one side. I need to move my constants over to the opposite side, so I need to do something with this negative 12. Well, to move it over, I do the inverse operation of negative 12, which would be positive 12. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Nothing's going on with the negative 9r, so we're going to bring it down. Negative 12 plus 12 is 0, so they'll cancel. And then 15 plus 12 is 27. Okay, so here is where we would still need to divide by the coefficient or multiply by the denominator. In this case, I'm going to divide by the coefficient because this is multiplication, so I do the opposite of multiplication and I would divide. Now, do not forget, when I'm dividing, I have to have a positive variable. To do so, I don't just divide by 9. I need to divide by negative 9, because a negative divided by a negative will give me a positive. So when I do this, the negative 9s will cancel each other out. So negative 9 divided by negative 9 will make it positive 1r. So I have r by itself now. And then what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I need to divide the other side by negative 9. Now in this case, I have a positive divided by a negative. Well, a positive divided by a negative will give me a negative answer. And then 27 divided by 9 is 3. So my answer would be negative r equals negative 3. So we're going to work one more. I have negative 26 minus 4j equals negative 48j plus 18. So you have to be careful with the integers here, guys, when you're working with these. I'm actually going to give you all some time. I want you to do this on your own, and I'll give you a hint to start off with, okay? So when we're working here, negative 4j is larger than negative 48j. Alright, so when we're collecting the variables, it's better to move the smaller variable over to the other side. So I want y'all to go ahead and give it a try on your own. When you get an answer, I'll give you about 4 minutes, and when you get an answer, go ahead and send it to me in the chat privately. Alright guys, so that's enough time. So I got some answers from some of y'all. It seems like some of y'all are kind of on the right track. Some of y'all were, I think you were pretty close. But we're going to go ahead and walk through it. I'm going to walk through it, pay attention, see if you can catch where, where you might have gone wrong. Okay. Yes, Morgan. Okay, so we have negative 48j and negative 4j. Alright, negative 48j and negative 4j. So again, I told y'all negative 48 is smaller than negative 4, right? Because the larger the negative value, the smaller the number is. Alright, so I'm going to move the negative 48j over first. So to get rid of negative 48j, I would do the inverse and I would add 48j. Remember, variables can only go with variables. So we're not adding it to the negative 26, we're adding it to the negative 4j. Alright, nothing's happening with the negative 26, so we're going to bring it down. Negative 4j plus 48j. Well, that would be the same thing as saying 48j minus 4j. So I could say that my answer would be 40 plus 44j. Well, negative 48j plus 48j would give 0, so those will cancel out. And nothing's going on with the 18, so we're going to bring it down. Alright. Now, I have the variables all on one side, so I need to move my constants to the other. So I got to get rid of this negative 26 here. So what I'm going to do so, I do the opposite of negative 26, and I'm going to add 26. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Those will cancel. I'm going to bring the 44j down because nothing's being done to it. And 18 plus 26 would be 44. Now, I have multiplication here, so I want to get the j by itself. So to do so, I do the opposite of multiplication, and I'm going to divide by the coefficient. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So the 44's end up canceling, and I get j equals, and then this is where some of y'all went wrong. 44 divided by 44 is not 0. 44 divided by 44 is 1. So then my answer would be j equals 1. Alright, so that'll be it for today. We'll work on this in a worksheet tomorrow.